Okay, let's take a quick trip back in time. Imagine it's, say, 20 years ago. You have this killer idea for a website, but to get it online, whoa. You first have to buy these huge, expensive physical servers, find a room with AC to keep them cool, and then just wait for weeks for everything to show up and get plugged in. Fast forward to today, you can do all of that, literally all of it, in about 30 seconds, and for less than the price of your morning coffee. So let's dive into the amazing technology that made this happen, the cloud.
Right. So to really get why the cloud is such a game changer, you have to understand the world before it. You have to understand the massive headache it solved. Because honestly, getting any digital project off the ground used to be this incredibly slow, super expensive, and really risky ordeal. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. Look at that contrast. The old way was all about buying physical stuff, hardware, which meant a huge upfront cost and weeks, sometimes months, of setup time. The new way, it's completely different. You're basically just renting computer power over the internet, and you can get started almost instantly with a pay-as-you-go model. No waiting, no massive bills upfront. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The old way forced you into this terrible guessing game called over-provisioning. You had to guess months in advance how popular your website was going to be. If you guessed too high and bought too many servers, you just wasted thousands of dollars on machines that were sitting there doing nothing. But if you guessed too low and your site suddenly got popular, it would crash. It was a high-stakes gamble every single time. So, with all those problems piling up, the tech world was desperate for a better way. And that need for an elegant solution led to a completely new way of thinking about how we build and run things on the internet. And here it is, at its very core, cloud computing is just this: the on-demand delivery of computing services over the internet. So instead of owning your own computers and storage, you access them from a provider like Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. It's not just someone else's computer. That's way too simple. It's a whole new model for how technology works. And what makes this model so incredibly powerful are 5 essential characteristics. I like to call them the cloud's 5 superpowers. These are the things that truly define the cloud and set it apart from anything that came before. Superpower number 1, on-demand self-service. This is huge. You don't need to call a salesperson or file a ticket and wait for a technician. If you need a new server or more storage, you just get it yourself. With a few clicks in a web browser, it's provisioned for you automatically. It's all in your control. Second up, broad network access. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Because everything is delivered over the internet, you can get to your stuff from pretty much anywhere in the world on any device. It doesn't matter if you're on a laptop in London or a smartphone in Tokyo. Third, and this one is really clever, is resource pooling. So cloud providers like Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure have these massive data centers with giant pools of hardware. They serve millions of customers from this shared infrastructure. Think of it like a giant apartment building for data, instead of everyone having to build their own individual house. This sharing creates these incredible economies of scale, which is what makes it so much cheaper for all of us. Okay, now this is the secret sauce: rapid elasticity. Remember that guessing game we talked about? This superpower makes it obsolete. If your app suddenly gets featured on the news and your traffic goes through the roof, the cloud can automatically add more power to handle it. And just as important, when the traffic dies down, it scales everything back down. So you always have exactly what you need, and you're never paying for what you don't. And the fifth and final superpower, measured service. The cloud is like a utility, like your electricity meter. The systems are constantly monitoring how much you're using, how much storage, how much compute time. This means you only pay for the resources you actually consume, often down to the millisecond. The bottom line? No more wasting money on idle servers. Ever. Okay, so now you get what the cloud is and what makes it so special. But how do you actually use it? Well, you can think of it kind of like a restaurant menu, with different levels of service depending on what you want. You'll hear about 3 main ways to consume cloud services, often called the as-a-service models. There's infrastructure, platform, and software. So let's just quickly break down what each of those actually means. First up, you've got IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. This gives you the most control. You're basically renting the fundamental building blocks, the virtual computers, the storage, the networks. You're in charge of the operating system and what runs on it. But the great part is, you don't have to worry about the physical data centers or the hardware. Next in the middle is PaaS, or platform as a service, With PaaS, the provider handles all that underlying infrastructure for you, and they give you the tools and services you need to build and deploy your applications. A perfect example is something like AWS Elastic Beanstalk. You literally just upload your code, and it takes care of the rest. This lets you focus only on writing code, not managing servers. And finally, we have SaaS, or Software as a Service. This is the one that most of us are already super familiar with, even if we don't know the name. And this quote sums it up perfectly. It's just software you use over the internet instead of having to install it on your computer. I mean, think about it. You probably use SaaS every single day. Services like Google Docs or Dropbox or Salesforce, they're all perfect examples of SaaS. You just log in through a web browser, and the provider handles absolutely everything. The software, the updates, the servers. It's by far the simplest way to use the power of the cloud. So we know what the cloud is and the different ways we can use it, but where does all this stuff actually exist? I mean, it's not actually a cloud, right? This brings us to the different deployment models, or you could think of them as the different neighborhoods where cloud services live. This table breaks it down really nicely. First, you have the public cloud. This is your AWS, your Microsoft Azure, your Google Cloud. It's owned by a third party, and it offers almost limitless scalability. Then you have a private cloud, which is built and operated just for a single organization. This gives you the absolute highest level of control and security. And finally, you have a hybrid cloud, which is really the best of both worlds. It connects a company's private cloud to a public one, giving them maximum flexibility. So when you start putting all these pieces together, the superpowers, the service models, the deployment options, it becomes crystal clear why the cloud has been one of the most transformational technologies of our lifetime. It didn't just change things a little bit, it fundamentally rewired the economics and the speed of innovation.
This financial shift right here is absolutely crucial. For decades, tech was a capital expenditure, or CapEx. That means big, risky, upfront investments in hardware. The cloud turned it into an operational expenditure, or OpEx. Suddenly, technology wasn't this massive purchase. It was a predictable monthly expense, like a utility bill. This one change is what fueled the explosion of startups we've seen over the last decade.
And this, for me, is the most profound impact of all. The cloud completely and utterly leveled the playing field. For the first time, a couple of people working out of a garage could instantly access the exact same world-class computing power, the same security, and the same global reach as a massive Fortune 500 company. That was never possible before.
Which really just leaves us with this final thought. For the first time in history, the tools to build a global, scalable technology company are available to pretty much anyone with an internet connection and a great idea. So the only question left is, what's going to be built next?
Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer on cloud computing. If you found this breakdown helpful and you're curious about the technologies that shape our world, do us a favor and hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more explainers just like this one. We'll see you in the next one.